Hi, everyone. My name is Angie Carson. I'm the manager of digital strategy at Site Crafting. And I am super excited to be presenting to everyone today about content and social media lessons from the musical Hamilton. I'm wearing my Hamilton sweatshirt that I was absolutely influenced on TikTok to buy. May have even bought my husband a matching George Washington sweatshirt. And so it feels really fitting to be wearing that while we are presenting. We will have some time for questions at the end of this presentation. So feel free to use the chat feature to ask questions throughout, and I'll get a chance to hopefully be able to answer as many as we can at the end of this. So let's go ahead and get started. Well, welcome to Content Lessons from Hamilton. Would love to tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit more about myself. Site Crafting is located here in Tacoma, Washington. We've been in business for over 25 years. We're a full service digital agency that does everything from website design, development, user research, and then what my team oversees, which is the content strategy for website redesign projects, search engine optimization, and digital marketing. Outside of work, I really enjoy DIY projects, being a baseball mom, and singing to my favorite musicals at the top of my lungs, as much as my kids hate it. I consider myself a lifelong storyteller. Doesn't matter what the format is. When I was a kid, I filled notebooks with short stories and cartoons. And now I try to tell stories in about 140 characters or less. And by no means am I a Hamilton expert, but I am a super fan. I loved this take on history and the fact that it seemed so accessible and inclusive. And if you know me at all, I love a good analogy. So I love being able to take things in real life and pop culture and relate it back to the things that are happening in my life. So let's dig in. You're here. You may want a revolution, but I've got my revelation. Social media is an incredibly important tool for business and should not be ignored. One of the questions I get a lot when I am talking to people at work or just friends that I know who own businesses is, do I really need to be doing social media when I have a website? And the answer is just like the Schuyler sisters, your website and social media channels can work together in harmony. Websites are really a place to push content, whether you're selling something or just sharing information, but it's more of like a one way street, right? You're just putting the information out there and you're hoping that people will find your website. Social media is a place to both send and receive content. You can engage with your customers and your audiences and gather information from them, being able to learn, you know, just as much as you're putting out there. Um, and it's also really important to think of some other. I have some key statistics too on the importance of having social media. So, according to a study done by Google, they studied younger audiences in the United States, and they found that 40% of Gen Z uses TikTok or Instagram to search if they're looking for something like a restaurant or business, rather than using something like Google Search or Google Maps. And nearly 71% of consumers who have had a positive experience with a brand on social media are more likely to recommend it to others. So, the revelation is that social media can be incredibly powerful to engage with customers, build brand awareness, increase your marketing or your website traffic, and it can overall be a more cost effective tool than traditional marketing channels. But the key is to know where your audience is and focus on that. One thing I also like to tell people is you don't have to be everywhere all at once. You don't have to be on Pinterest, TikTok, Be Real, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of the things. It would be impossible to keep up with. And especially if you're just getting started, just pick one and do it really well. Put your time into that and then take the lessons that you've learned and move into something else. So, where do you get started? You lean and you find your right hand man. And that right hand man is your strategy. So, taking the words of Hamilton, you have to organize your information so you can rise to the occasion. By creating a solid foundation, you think about why you exist on social media. Think of your business or even marketing goals, the type of content you can produce and support, which is another important key, what your voice and tone is as you are speaking to people, and creating a strategy helps provide consistency for your brand. That is something that comes through loud and clear for people if they come into your store or they visit your website or find you on social media. That consistency in your brand, how you interact with people, will really set the tone for how they engage with you. And because the strategy is important because it really liberates you from the struggle of thinking through the tactical day to day, right? So sometimes you may be on social media just trying to figure out what is it that I'm supposed to post today, or how do I respond to these things, or what do I need to be doing on social media? That strategy is really helpful for just setting guardrails for you. So it makes the day to day a lot easier for you. And another thing I like to point out too is that strategy isn't just for when you're getting started. It can be really valuable to revisit or rethink your goals. I recently worked with a team that were doing a pretty good job on social. They posted consistently, had fun content, and had a ton of ideas, bottomless bucket of ideas of what they wanted to continue to post on social. But when we kind of got down to talking further about their goals, they felt really lost and unsure of how to make sure that all of the content that they were posting was supporting their overall business goals and for each department goals. So we took a step back, helped them identify what really matters, and created an even stronger strategy that told them and gave them guidelines on what they could say yes to when getting different requests, where they could say no, and how they could move forward and feel a lot more consistent when talking about their brand. So I thought it would be really helpful to dive into some strategy examples because this kind of feels like a really sticky place to start. So starting with your voice and tone. Your voice is really important because having a consistent voice across platforms helps maintain the integrity of your brand, as I said earlier. Really enforces who you are and aligns people with your business. Your tone may shift slightly by platform or by channel. So your tone is more like the attitude in which you say things, um, but your voice should remain clear and consistent across all channels. So our first example here is for like a creative agency. Your voice might be that you are creative, fun, approachable, and how that comes across when you're creating content or even talking to people on social media is we are authentic, confident, and casual. And it's also important to think about what you are not. And so for this creative agency, saying we are not stuffy, authoritative, or careless in the way that we speak. Another example, maybe if you're in a more conservative industry like banking or healthcare, your voice might be a little bit more thoughtful, confident, and informative. And how that comes across in your content is you are trustworthy, experts, and friendly, but you are not academic, casual, or pretentious. So again, having these guardrails for you, creating those while you're creating your content for social media really helps give you what you do want to do, what you don't want to do, and then some room in between. Here's an example of channel differentiation. So it's really important to make sure that if you are on multiple platforms, that you're not just copying and pasting the same thing in four different places. So if someone who is following you on Instagram as well as LinkedIn, they're just seeing the same post over and over again. It doesn't have like a great engagement strategy. Your When you set up your strategy, you can flex to meet the culture of each social channel. Um, and it helps and you can help shape your content. So for example, we'll go with Instagram, which is a much more kind of creative platform. So for businesses on Instagram, the focus could be around more storytelling, sharing behind the scenes, and highlighting culture and employees. It's also important to think about your goals when you're on those social media platforms. So, in this case, our goal is to just reinforce your brand, create opportunities for connection that and supports recruitment, and then also think about measurement. So, how do these things matter? How are you going to measure success? And in this case, for Instagram, we're looking at reach, comments, story views, and shares. On the flip side, let's take that and turn it into what channel differentiation strategy would be for LinkedIn. LinkedIn is much more business to business, a lot more professionals using it, skews to a slightly older audience as well. So, our focus there on LinkedIn might be not so much storytelling, but sharing job posting and creating opportunities to network with peers and industry partners, as well as showcase your talent and work. And that's all because the goal for us being on social or for being on LinkedIn is to demonstrate expertise, recruit talent, and develop leads. And the way that we are measuring that for success are leads, reach, engagement, and link clicks. Our next lesson comes from Eliza when she tells Hamilton that his presence would just be enough. And that is to say that social media doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but you do need to invest your time. And if you can invest your time, then that is more than enough. Um, or if you can also take it from Hamilton's point of view when he says all he's got is a tolerance for pain, which you sometimes need when facing social media, and his top-notch brain. Um, Leaning in on your strategy. Oh, sorry. Um, focus on finding good stories and learning what your customers find valuable and share that content on social media. And I know that sometimes that can take a little bit of time, but if you focus your time in finding those stories and finding good ways to share it, that would provide value for your customers when you're on social media. Um, and you can spend money as well if you want. You can do ads to promote your business or your products on social media, or you can boost posts, but you absolutely don't need to do that. I think, creating ads and boosting posts help expand your reach so that more people can see it. But maybe your goal is you really just want people to engage. And so you can spend time digging in, leaning into your strategy and your goals, and taking the time to get yourself set up really well. Which leads us to our next lesson, which is don't wait for it. Let's not follow in the steps of Burr. Um, and that is to not be afraid to experiment when it comes to the type of content that you're sharing on social media. Um, Sometimes inspiration or even comparison when it comes to creating that content for sharing what type of products you have or why people would want to do business with you or what testimonials, for example, can be really hard to come up with, or you may feel like you're comparing yourself to a competitor, which is why I really love this underrated quote from Burr at the end of Hamilton, where he says, "The world was wide enough for both Hamilton and me." And that is when it comes to social, you may be overthinking when you create content, thinking it has to be a hit out of the park, amazing original pieces of content every single time you post. Or maybe you're following a competitor thinking that you could never create the same. But guess what? There is more than enough room for the both of you on social media, which is why I always say to leave some room for experimentation. So I've been referring to our guidelines as guardrails. And that is because I like to be able to leave some room to give yourself the flexibility to experiment with the type of content that you create. A good place to start is to try something new in at least one post that you create each month because you may find that people really respond to that piece of content. Or they find this piece of information that you thought no one's going to want to know, this how to or behind the scenes, or even just giving information about our business. But you could very much be wrong. People could be, really hungry for that information. I have some examples for if you need to know where to get started. You can reuse content in a new format. This is one of my favorite formulas. Take a blog post that you've written, or a white paper or a case study, maybe that you have on your own website. You could even take a single product that you have in your store and try to recreate some content in a new format. Um, if you're on Instagram, you have the option of doing reels, stories, sliders, or galleries on Instagram. On LinkedIn, you could just do a long form post talking about it. That content can really live in a million different ways. So you could try it in a new format and see how it responds. Try video, or doing something behind the scenes is usually really exciting for people who are aligned with your brand and want to know more about you. Or what I like to do is save posts that I see on social media, and try to adapt them for my own business. I've got a whole saved folder in my Instagram of posts that I thought really, like, I call them scroll stoppers. But it's from brands that I'm following, I'm digging through, and then it makes me stop and think, wow, that's really cool. I want to do something similar. So leave some room for experimentation in your social media strategy. Which leads to uh, our next one, which is to include women in the sequel. Specifically, that you should think about who's telling your story. How are you telling your own story on social media? And is there anyone who's missing? What stories aren't being told and why? Because especially on social, your story may be told whether you're there or not. People may be talking about your business, their interactions with you. They may not even be tagging you. And so, think of all of the different ways that your stories are being shared on social. Now, if you work for a larger business or have lots of different locations, telling stories can be a little bit difficult because you're not at those locations. You don't know what's happening in those departments, which is why it's important to cultivate relationships, and uh, build relationships with people in different departments or different locations so that they can give you a tip if something really cool is happening at their location. Maybe they're frying a turkey in a parking lot on Christmas or Thanksgiving, because the team wanted to. That is a really fun thing that you could share on social that showcases your employee culture. Sometimes if there's like a Nerf gun fight that you organized or a potluck that you organized in a different location, that is also really fun for people to see, and can help showcase who you are as a brand. So make sure that you're making those relationships. Ask them if there's a missing story or if they can even help add to your story. All that to say that you should never be satisfied. And when I say that, I mean you should make sure you are measuring your successes. So be sure to track your goals that you set in that foundation of your strategy, and use tools like analytics. You can get analytics directly from social channels. If you click into it, especially if you have a business profile, you should be able to see who's looked at it, who's engaged with it. There's also Google Analytics. So if you are using your social media as a way to channel people over to your website, you can look at Google Analytics and be able to see how many people visited my website after coming to me on social media. Um, so look at your key performance indicators from your strategies, keep track of those. I recommend reviewing that at least on a monthly or quarterly basis at the very least. And again, look at what's driving traffic to your website, what's driving leads to, phone calls or people into your store. And then most importantly, where are your opportunities, your areas for opportunities? So tracking allows you to not just find out what's working, can also help you figure out if you need to improve, if you need to adjust your content calendar, or maybe say you get a request from somebody else or your goals change and you need to pivot. Measuring your success helps you give some baseline on what is working really well so that you can use that and adapt it in other places. And if you can do all of that, you will blow them all away. But that is not to say that the very last important piece of the social media strategy is to make sure that you're being consistent. Because when people learn to expect, they know what to expect on your social media, it creates a place where they feel like they can engage with you and they know that you're going to be there to answer their questions, share fun information, or really just, they want to come and check out what you're doing for your site, your products, and they're really excited to be able to engage with you. Oh, did I skip one? So, what did I miss? As we are kind of wrapping this up, or if you tuned out, walked away, and came back, I will give you um, one last recap, and that is in the form instead of our 10 dual commandments, I have my 10 social commandments that we can lean on as a recap. So number one is the challenge is to demand satisfaction. If they engage, then no need for further action. This is your end goal, right? You want to be able to have a strong strategy, consistently post, and get good engagement. Number two, if they don't, try again, reuse your content over and over again. It's easy to feel discouraged if you're not getting engagement or reach that you were hoping for, but reuse that content. I say it earlier and kind of finding different ways for how you can repackage that content and use it in different platforms or use it as a different medium. But also just know that people aren't keeping track of how many times you post things. Did you know that the average lifespan of an Instagram story is only 24 hours? That's as long as they're up. A tweet, the lifespan of a tweet is only 15 to 20 minutes. And a TikTok video is even shorter than that. So attention spans are super, super short. If you posted a TikTok video and, 5 minutes later, people are moving on. They've found something different. So you can take that TikTok video and then be able to post it on Instagram. And it's brand new for at least another 24 hours, if not longer. So don't be afraid to reuse your content. Number three is meet face to face. All that to say, cultivate those relationships. You don't have to tell your story all by yourself. Create those relationships with people who can give you tips, help you gather content, or even share your story, like literally sharing it so that other people can see it. Number four, if they don't, that's all right. Lean on your foundation and don't be afraid to experiment. So again, leaving that flexibility in your content calendar to try something new. Be sure to keep track of those platforms and how it's performing as well, because you may find that a certain subject, certain content type performs best for you. Number five is make easy things easy. So, you've put in a lot of time, you've invested a lot of time in creating that strategy, and now it comes to the day to day. When you can, make easy things easy. If you use a posting tool, let it pick the best time to post things. You don't have to agonize over, do I post at 9 a.m.? Do I post at Thursday at exactly 11:45? Let the tools that you have use that. And I think even if you're not using a posting or scheduling tool that like Instagram or LinkedIn may even tell you on your business profile when you have high times of engagement. Number six is to revisit your content calendar often. So doing things with consistency make it easier. If you can set yourself up so that you can see a week in advance, that's great. If you can see a month in advance, that's even better. But if you can even just get a little bit ahead, having that content calendar is something that you can lean on. And it makes it even easier when you have to adjust your content or even pivot if new goals arise. Number 7 is to be authentic. Stay true to that strategy, your voice, your goals. You don't need to constantly compare, which is something that can be really hard to do when it comes to social media. But my advice is to just focus on you and your audience and providing what is most valuable for them. Number 8, don't be afraid to oh, there's a typo there, it says education, but don't be afraid to educate or be your own champion for your business. Some of my favorite local businesses that I follow on social media have dedicated certain days or have like a kind of series going on of the struggles it takes to own a small business. And for me, and yeah, I find it really interesting. These are the ins and outs that you don't know or the struggles that these small business owners are finding when they're, just trying to run a business, especially during the pandemic. So while it might feel really vulnerable, it also makes people feel more strongly aligned with your business, your values, maybe more likely that they will come to you and you stay top of mind instead of them going to Amazon. Um, and truly they feel connected and engaged with you, even though it's just through their phone. um, Number 9, you've got all of the lessons. It's time to summon all of the courage you require, and be consistent. Make that plan, stick with it. As I said earlier, when your customers know what to expect of you on social media, they may be more likely and inclined to engage with you. Number 10 is go for it, blow them all away. Thank you for joining us. I hope you really enjoyed all of the Hamilton references, and learned something about social media in the process. I think I finished just a tad bit early, but we'll have some time for questions. I also want to point out too, I love talking digital marketing, and just really love kind of the marketing sphere, social media. So I put my contact information below along with our website. If you are interested in reaching out, I would love to hear from you. If you have more questions, I would be more than happy to answer them if we don't get to them just now.
Hi there. Yeah, thank you for all of that. We do have a few questions in the chat already. So let's start with you kind of already just touched on this, but are there any resources to help me get started as a small business with a new strategy on social media?
Yes. Yeah, um, there's some really great resources online. If you follow HubSpot is a tool that is a scheduling poster. Like we use it as well. I've used it in the past, or they have other tools, but they also have really great free resources and blogs that talk about what's trending on social media. They have a very handy social media image guide that gives you what is the size you should post for Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. So they have some really great resources. I would recommend giving them a follow on Twitter, or even just looking at their blog. There's some other great social media blogs out there. And then I would also say occasionally I will look at Reddit threads when it comes to social media marketing just to see what other people are doing or what questions they have. So there is definitely free resources out there to help you get started or even just to help support you along the way.
That's great. Thanks. One of the questions mentioned that they really liked how you shared about your voice or the business's voice. If you find that you need to shift to a different voice because you aren't getting the right clients, is it better to introduce a new voice, or do you just rip off the band-aid and do it? Or oh yeah, and just rip off the band-aid, or do you do it gradually?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Um, there is some strategy that needs to be put in behind having a new voice, right? Because it is a consistency, especially if it varies a little bit differently, even if it comes just, it doesn't even have to be 180. That would be harder to do. But if it was just a little bit different, there does need to be some thought put forth first on how do we talk about some of the old things that we were talking about? What needs to be updated before we kind of introduce this new voice. But I will say, once you have decided that, it is best to just move forward with it, especially because if you do it gradually and you kind of are fighting with two different voices, people are going to get really confused about your business, and they're going to start telling a story of their own. So it's more advantageous for you to be able to just, once you've decided it, you've got that strategy set up, rip off the band-aid, start fresh, and just follow down that path. And you can course correct others as needed, but at least you have your new guidelines for where you need to be.
Awesome. Consistency is key, it sounds like.
Yes, it is.
All right. So, what about how you mentioned reusing content in different forms, but how often can you reuse it?
My answer is forever. I truly think that you can reuse your content, especially when it's content that's hard to put together, right? So even a blog post, if you're just one person trying to run a business, taking a couple of hours and writing a full blog post, you want to make sure that that thing has legs forever. And there is plenty of ways to be able to split that up into different pieces, turn it into a couple different tweets, turn it into a highlight on your Instagram, and then maybe after a year or two, you're going to need to revisit that content and update it. So I would say just go back to some of the content that you know has performed really well, and update it and post it again, and it'll be fresh for as long as you need it to.
Awesome. So, what about if we have limited resources? So, a lot of business owners are just starting out, or they just don't have a huge budget for marketing purposes. So, what would you say, or what would you say to those businesses that do have limited resources?
Yes, yeah. This is really where your strategy comes into play. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse talking about strategy, but it will truly set you free, especially as someone who has limited resources, because A, it's going to give you the ability to say no to things. Because if you're looking at it, you have your goals, you have a strategy, you have decided this is why I'm going to be on social media, and something doesn't quite fit within, those what we are and what we aren't, then it makes it easier for you to say no and say, actually, I'm going to dedicate my time doing this. So, really, that strategy and taking that time is really important. And then I would say, just be consistent. You don't have to post every single day, but if you posted at least once a week and people came to your feed to look at what you're doing, they see that you're consistent, then they'll know that you're there. You can engage with them. If they had a question for you, you would be there to answer.
Awesome. Okay, so these ones kind of switch over to the marketing realm.
Yeah.
So, what is the most common way for small businesses to find their best marketing niche?
Oh.
I don't know if that's
Yeah.
social media or what they're referencing, but
Yeah. I would say experiment. Honestly, if you're just starting out and you're not quite sure how should I be talking about, like, what exactly I should be doing when I put information out there, try a couple different things. Try just talking about how to's if it's a product, or just try talking about, the benefits of that product, or you just have someone interacting with the product, right? Like, those are three different ways that you could be talking about a product, working with a product, and see what works. That's where the tracking also comes in handy, because you can see, if I was talking about this product and I linked it to my store, did people actually go and visit it? Or was there no engagement at all? If there wasn't, then that's okay. It happens. Let's just try something new. So I would say, in order to find your niche, leave some room for maybe a little bit more room for experimentation.
awesome. On in the realm of marketing as well. So, sometimes the business owners will see marketing that say that they guarantee a return or a rate of return of some sort, but they're not sure, is it a scam? Are these things too good to be true that are out there? And how would business owners know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I
I mean, can
mean,
any marketing actually guarantee a return?
I mean, sometimes, right? It depends on your goals. That's the other thing that really, I think is important, is what is your goal for being in social media, being on social media? If the goal is to drive leads, if the goal is to push sales to your website, then there is that direct return, right? You can see they jump from my social media post into my website, and then I watch them do sales. But sometimes social media can be a little bit more squishy than that. Someone may interact with you 4 or 5 times before they decide to visit your store, but they're still interacting. They've liked your post. They've maybe saved something that you posted talking about the product that they want. And so I guess I would say if you feel like it's something that can help you reach your goals and it's something that you can track, um, then that is a good thing. But it's not always guaranteed, right? If someone promises that they're going to make you go viral, that's no. Viral is a stroke of luck and good timing and really good content all rolled into one beautiful little viral ball. But I would say make sure you know what your goals are before meeting with somebody and talking about what those returns look like.
Awesome. Good. Uh, Good information there. All right, so let's wrap up here. Last question should be, what do you do when you see engagement shift from one of the channels to another one?
Yes. Yeah. This has been really interesting. And something that I have seen even in our own business that we're working on or that I work at, where we were having a lot of engagement on Facebook and then we saw it switch to Instagram. And so what that meant for us was we took a look at our content calendar. And, at this point, we were posting a couple of times a week on like 3 to 4 times a week on Facebook, maybe only once or twice on Instagram. But when we started to see that engagement shift, kind of flipped it around, and we started doing equal amounts of posts on Instagram as well as on Facebook, seeing what determined best, and found a little bit more of that channel differentiation, which we thought was really interesting. So Instagram, people were engaging a lot with our culture, talking about you know who our team was, what we do behind the scenes, what we do outside of work. People loved that. And when we posted that on Facebook, it wasn't quite the same. So we shifted not just how often we posted on each channel, but the type of content that we post.
So does each channel have different audience, I would assume, depending on
Yeah.
like TikTok versus Facebook, right?
Yes, definitely. Our Facebook, and this is something that you can dig into if you're looking at the type of audience that you have, the people who are following you on your own Facebook and Instagram. But we found on our Facebook that it was mostly partners, people that we worked with directly, community members. Whereas on Instagram, it was a lot more of our like peers, people we knew that worked in very similar fields, or former employees that were still following along with us, or even just a bit more friends and family, which we originally thought more friends and family followed us on Facebook. So it's an interesting shift, and
Yeah.
makes it all more important for me to say, make sure that you're checking in on those measurements, of what your demographics look like, and where people are engaging with you most.
Awesome. This has all been really, really great information. Thanks for bringing it all up. If you want to do a wrap up and then we'll be done.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me for social media lessons from Hamilton. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Again, if you want to reach out, you can find me at www.sitecraftings, SITECRAFTING.com. There's a bio page that has my information. You can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram as well. And I would love to hear from you if you have any other questions. And thank you for having me.